Mormons! Members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. There have been some interesting misconceptions about me and about my character. Starting off, bare minimum, people tell me I'm a teenager all the time, which I don't. It's like, well, these Mormon teenagers, they're really different. They're built different. I'm not a teenager. I'm happy you think I look young, but I'm not a teenager. People also often tell me that give it 5 years and I'll be out of the church, baby. I'll be gone. I'll be out of here. I really doubt that's gonna happen. Obviously, I'm not. Listen, all things are possible, but I'm pretty sure I'm gonna be. Now, the reason I say that is because I do have a little bit of a story. Believe it or not, I'm a person with a past. I didn't just appear out of nowhere. So I want to tell that story. So if you don't like my content, you're not gonna like this. It's gonna be long. So just don't. You can stop right now. It's fine. So back in about 2022, I don't really know. It was a tough time for me. So it's kind of there's a lot going on there. I remember that's when I found the Mormon Stories podcast, right? And I had a ton of respect for it. I remember I would I would binge it like hard. I would wake up, go to work, and the job I was working, I could put headphones in, and so I put headphones in or headphones, earbuds, whatever. Anyways, I put them in and I would listen. I would just listen to the podcast, and I would just let it marinate, really. And it really never really bugged me. It seemed like a lot of people were hurt by the church, and I wasn't hurt by the church, really. But there were some strange things that they were talking about that I was like, what? And needless to say, my testimony was on the... I would also like to say, at the same time, I was probably doing things I shouldn't be doing as a member of the church. I like to acknowledge that. It was happening. So my testimony was going down. I wasn't living at home, so I was living by myself. And I was also doing things I at least as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we have certain standards. I was not living up to those standards. Anyways, I remember watching one of the episodes of Mormon Stories podcast, and I ran into, they said something about like, oh, when members find out about Fanny Alger, that's the end of their testament. And then they never explained who Fanny Alger was. They were just like, oh, you Fanny Alger. So I paused the video and I looked up Fanny Alger in Reddit, and holy Hannah! I mean, it was probably 2 hours of Fanny Alger, and then Helen Kimball, and then multiple other wives of Joseph Smith when they the trial where all those people talked about that they did have sexual relationships with Joseph Smith, and that things happened behind Emma's back. I mean, I was like, oh! And I remember just crying. I remember literally crying. I remember being terrified. I remember sitting just on my couch and being like, this is the end of my testimony. That pit in my stomach just like, grrr. I was for sure that there was no recovering from this. And then this drug on for about a year and a half, probably pushing 2 years. It really was just like me, just every day, like binging. I mean, I was just binging, not even Mormon Stories podcast anymore. I was binging everything that you could binge about cults, about other podcasters, other people, and I was terrified of asking any questions to like real people. And the worst part was the night that the Fanny Alger night. I remember studying all this stuff on Reddit, and then I went to the church's website and typed in Fanny Alger, and I couldn't find anything. I think that was just my own fault. But anyways, the church was everything that these people were saying it was. I was like, oh my gosh, it's a cult that hides things. And my testimony was just like, and I was also, because I was kind of like falling apart a little bit, I was just kind of doing whatever I wanted to do. Like, I was living a life that I was like, this is going to be the life I live. And I really was scared. I was like, how am I going to tell my family? How do I tell my family about any of this? And so it was like, it was just and then I went and talked to a bishop. I went and talked to a bishop about my problems. Now, if you're an ex-member of the church, it's a bad move. That's going to be the nail in the coffin. And guess what? My bishop responded to me in a way that was just like far from what I felt should have been love. He was like, bruh. He was like, I wasn't in school at the time. He was just like, you're not doing anything with your life, and you're also sinning, and you're also consuming a bunch of stuff that you shouldn't consume. And, like, what are you doing? So I was like, what in the world? Everything I knew was just spiraling. And I remember being ticked. I was like, yo, I have so much information in my brain about something. Like, it's like believing Lord of the Rings was based on a true story for the longest time, and then all of a sudden it's not. Like, I love Frodo Baggins, but he's not a real dude. Anyways, one time I just finally decided that I was going to read the Bible, which that's probably kind of funny for some people to hear, but I was like, I'm going to read the Bible because, like, there must be something here. Like, did anything bad ever happen in God's church? Like, is this the first time that something bad and bad things and bad history have happened in God's church? Because if God's church has always been perfect, then this was obviously not his church. Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints is not his church, obviously. And, guess what? The Bible's freaking nuts! So then I was like, well, what in the world? And I started doing as much research as I could into Mormon history. And just dissecting it. I mean, researched everything. I also stopped sinning. I know. Crazy concept, crazy idea. And as I researched and started living a better lifestyle, healthier lifestyle. And I also forgot to explain that I was like in and out of therapy. I was medicated, multiple different types of medications that I was on, and multiple, attempts. Like, I wasn't doing good. So, and I blamed it all on the church. Like, I was like, well, I didn't all the way blame it on the church, but I was like, according to all these shows I'm watching, this is probably church's fault. And, But then this was the turnaround where I was like, I'm going to stop doing these things that are morally not good. These are not good things. And I'm going to start actually taking some serious study. I'm going to start taking care of my testimony. So I did. And it's a long story, right? But I found out that a lot of these people who were ex-members and anti-members or whatever it may be, or post-members, whatever they weren't telling the whole truth. Not at least according to some historians. And there were a lot of people that I found out that knew about all of this stuff and were still members of the church. So I got to pick their brains. Like, what is your thing? And a lot of them just kind of brushed off their shoulders. But some people had some real answers. And may I remind you, I had no idea about any of these other podcasts like Ward Radio or Thoughtful Faith or Stick of Joseph. Like, I didn't find any of that stuff until well after this little journey that I went on. But I realized that the more I educated myself on church history, on things like blacks in the priesthood, that one was nuts. It was like 78. Are you kidding? 1978? The more I actually studied this stuff, the stronger my testimony in the church became. Because I see where the church is right now. And I'm sorry, but I do think it's a positive place. I think it's grown. I think it's been guided. People say, like, the church just follows trends or whatever it may be. But then at the same time, they're like, oh, the church is weird. Everyone in the church is so weird. So do we follow trends, or are we weird? Are we do we set our own trends, or do we follow trends? Like, what? Things about, like, polygamy. Like, what? That's just not a thing in the church anymore, unless a man is married to a woman and then that woman dies and he marries another woman. They're sealed together, but we really, like prophets have said, we don't know what the afterward, like, the afterlife is really going to look like. Finding out that prophets can be wrong, like it is in the Bible. This is through history. This is a thing. This is not just made up. And maybe at one time or whatever, the church may have taught that prophets have to be infallible. But prophets are pretty vocal now that they can be wrong, and they're just they're genuinely trying their best. I can't break it all down to everything that I learned, but I know the church is true. Like, I've studied all of this stuff. I mean, I spent two years trying to figure out how to leave, and I'm here. So I'm not uneducated about the subject, but I don't feel like I can deny what I know. I genuinely don't feel like I can just throw away the stuff that I have learned and so much of the evidence that the church is true. And, like, so if you're struggling, that's the point. That's the point. The point I want to get to is, if you're struggling with the gospel, I've been saying it, lock in. Do some research. Be a man about your testimony and do some research. Because the church is true. And it's all about Jesus, baby.